Hi, I'm Linda Jaivin, and I'm the author of 12 books. My latest one, which I'm going to be reading from today, is called The Shortest History of China, and it was published by Black Ink in Melbourne last year, 2021. It's being published in, I don't know how many countries now. Russian and German and Greek and Japanese translations are underway, as well as Italian and Portuguese, and it's already out in the US and the UK. So I'm really, really thrilled. One of the reasons I'm so thrilled is that this has always been my dream, to write a history like this. I studied Chinese university more or less by accident at university. I sort of stumbled into a class and I loved it so much. I was so immediately entranced that I had to keep going with it, and it became my major. I didn't know what I was going to ever do with it because at the time China was pretty closed. There wasn't, the economic reform period hadn't started, and so you couldn't really imagine doing anything but becoming a diplomat or a spy, and I didn't think I was very cut out for either of those occupations, not being terribly diplomatic or discreet. So anyway, I did become a writer, and after so many years I have actually done it. I've written the book that was my dream. It was to write a popular history of China and hopefully get other people as, I suppose, charmed by Chinese history as I was. And I think there's a real call for that at the moment, when in geopolitical terms there's a lot of talk about China as an enemy, and we need to get beyond that to understand the whole country. And I think that's really, really important, and never more important than in times like this. So I'm going to read to you from the introduction. There is no Chinese curse that goes, "May you live in interesting times." In any case, it would be redundant. Chinese history simmers with larger-than-life characters, philosophical arguments and political intrigues, military conflicts and social upheavals, artistic invention and technological innovation. It progresses in twists, turns, leaps, and returns. Chinese historical records are long and deep, stretching back at least 3,500 years. Their themes and lessons, as well as the memories of wounds and triumphs, pulsate under the surface of contemporary Chinese life, language, culture, and politics. The increasingly key role the People's Republic of China plays in global affairs makes an awareness of this history essential, for it is the key to understanding China today. Take, for example, the insistence of the Chinese Communist Party that Hong Kong and Taiwan, along with Tibet, Xinjiang, and islands in the South China Sea, are part of China. The intensity with which the party pursues unification has roots in the humiliation and semi-colonialization of China by imperialist powers in the 19th century and the civil war of the 20th century. It also speaks to violent periods of division that occurred as long ago as 2,000 years, but have left their stamp on the national psyche. That the first great unification in 221 BCE, which also involved the epic standardization of weights, measures, and the written language, came with a high dose of tyranny, is also part of this history's complex legacy. Nothing about China is small in scale. With some 1.4 billion people, the PRC boasts the world's largest population. Nearly 1 in every 5 people on Earth, not counting another 45 million people worldwide who identify as Chinese, belong to China. At 9.3 million square kilometers, it occupies the third largest landmass of any country after Russia and Canada, and shares borders with 14 different nations. The PRC is the world's largest trading nation and second largest economy, a manufacturing powerhouse and an assertive military power, its army bigger than any other national armed force. It plays a steadily increasing role in global institutions and international affairs. The PRC's trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative, with projects in countries as diverse as Afghanistan, Ecuador, Bahrain, Bulgaria, Ethiopia, and Vietnam, is the most ambitious global infrastructure building project in history. Domestic schemes are often no less monumental, whether they involve constructing giant dams, establishing pervasive systems of surveillance, or creating the longest open sea fixed link on the planet, the 55-kilometer long Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. The PRC is also a leader in artificial intelligence, green technology, and communications network infrastructure. It aims to be a world leader in science and technology by 2050. The rise of the People's Republic has inspired a range of reactions abroad, including concern about political influence operations and human rights violations. Beijing's insistence that it defines human rights differently to the West does little to reassure its critics. Although the party claims to speak on behalf of all 1.4 billion Chinese nationals, history makes it clear that the people of this great land have always embraced a range of intellectual, philosophical, political, and cultural positions. China is diverse in numerous ways. If more than 90% of the population claim Han ethnicity, the rest belong to 55 other ethnic groups, including Uyghurs, Mongolians, and Tibetans. Many speak distinct languages and retain their own religious and cultural practices despite what we can see as quite intense pressure to assimilate. The Han, too, may identify with different regional cultures and subcultures and speak discrete and even mutually unintelligible dialects, including Shanghainese and Cantonese, the last claiming more native speakers, over 62 million, than Italian. The national language, Putonghua, sometimes called Mandarin in English, is a constructed tongue. The PRC's own Ministry of Education admitted in 2013 that Putonghua was spoken with native fluency by less than 10% of the population, and barely at all by 30%, though it did aim to change that. Northerners prefer wheat and Southerners rice, but not always. Some Chinese never touch chili, while others can't cook without it. Beijingers complain that Shanghainese are mercantile and petty. Shanghainese snipe back that Beijingers are big-hearted but crude. All stereotypes fall apart in the face of Chinese diversity. The citizenry of the PRC includes subsistence farmers and jet-setting billionaires, Buddhist monks and nightclub owners, passionate feminists and steely patriarchs, avant-garde artists and aerospace engineers, yak herders and film animators, pro-democracy activists and loyal communists. They may live in towering apartment blocks, courtyard houses built to a 2,000-year design, European-style villas, longhouses, stilt houses, yurts, or even modified caves. They may be fans of Peking opera, Western opera, punk, throat singing, canto pop, chess, video games, Korean soap operas, calligraphy, photography, ballroom dancing, fan dancing, all or none of the above. The heavily urbanized landscape of China's 23 provinces and 5 autonomous regions, Guangxi, Inner Mongolia, Tibet, Ningxia, and Xinjiang, is as varied as its people, ranging from frozen steppes to tropical islands, jungles, deserts, fertile farmland, tall mountains, and low floodplains. The PRC boasts several of the most populous cities on Earth. Its 4 provincial-level municipalities include Chongqing, home to more than 30 million, and Shanghai, with over 26 million. Aside from the Yangtze, the 3rd longest river in the world, 6 of Asia's major rivers originate in Tibet: the Indus, the Ganges, the Brahmaputra, Irrawaddy, Salween, and Mekong. The construction of upstream dams, mines, and irrigation projects, and even the afforestation of the Tibetan Plateau, all have implications for the water security of almost half the world's population. President Xi Jinping's pledge to the United Nations in September 2020 that China will reduce its net carbon emissions to 0 by 2060, if followed through, could help address climate change and determine the future of the planet itself. A disciple once asked Confucius, who lived between 551 and 479 BCE, what would be the first thing he'd do if he were in charge? Confucius replied, rectify the names. He explained, if the names are not correct, if they do not match realities, language has no object. If language is without an object, action becomes impossible, and therefore all human affairs disintegrate and their management becomes pointless and impossible. The first appearance of the name China in a European language is in a 16th century Spanish text. The word seemingly derives from references to the ancient Qin dynasty via Sanskrit and Japanese. In Chinese, the most common expression for China in the sense of nation is 中国. The expression dates back 3,000 years to the ancient compilation of poetry and song, the Book of Odes. Zhong means middle or center. The second character, guo, contains a mouth representing the people, a dagger axe signifying defense, within an enclosure called a wei. And I have all of this in the book. It's kind of hard to show you here. So what Guo, this nation, originally referred to was not a nation, but a fortified city. It only later came to mean a kingdom and finally a nation state. Although Zhongguo is often translated as Middle Kingdom, Zhong originally referred to the center of the kingdom or the city, rather than implying that the kingdom itself was at the center of the world. Interesting, right? Another popular way to refer to China is Zhonghua. Hua can signify splendor, radiance, or prosperity. It was the name of one of the two ancient tribes of settlers along the Yellow River from which Han Chinese claim descent. Zhonghua is less about a specific territory than a civilization, encompassing notions of myth, legend, history, and culture. So it embraces the broader Chinese world, radiating out from the mainland, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, to diasporic communities from Canberra to Kuala Lumpur, Singapore to Senegal. Although there are other phrases that signify China, it's reasonable to say that the idea of China lies somewhere between Zhongguo and Zhonghua,